Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we love to explore the twists and turns of history, right?
Yeah, those unexpected moments where things get a little, well, weird.
Exactly. And today we're diving headfirst into a particularly fascinating controversy swirling around sainthood.
Oh, this should be good. Saints, you say?
Yep, Saint Onuphrius to be precise. He's a pretty big deal in both Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic traditions, revered for his piety and all that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the controversy? Spill the tea.
So there's this claim floating around that Saint Onuphrius was originally a woman who transitioned into a man. A transgender saint, if you will.
Whoa, hold on. A transgender saint? That's a pretty bold claim. Where's this even coming from?
It seems to originate from Konstantinos Kalymnios, an Australian lawyer with Greek roots. He's pointed to a specific image of St. Onuphrius in the Snake Church in Görem, Turkey.
The Snake Church. Never heard of it.
It's in Cappadocia, this region in Turkey famous for its crazy rock formations and ancient cave dwellings. Super cool place.
Sounds like it. So what about this image?
Well, according to Kalymnios, it depicts St. Onuphrius with, and I quote, prominently displayed breasts.
And based on that, he's concluding Saint Onuphrius was transgender.
That's his argument, yeah. But here's where things get a little, shall we say, complicated.
I figured there was a but coming. Lay it on me.
When you start digging into traditional Orthodox sources, you find zero, and I mean absolutely zero, mention of this claim.
Wait, seriously, none.
Nope. It's like it doesn't exist in their historical record. For example, the prologue from Orid, basically the ultimate collection of saints' lives in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Completely silent on the matter.
So their go-to guide for understanding saints doesn't even hint at this whole transgender thing?
Not even a whisper. And it's not just the prologue from Orid. We're talking church websites, writings from the Orthodox Church in America, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, you name it. Nothing.
Wow, that's a pretty significant omission if this was such a well-known part of St. Onuphrius' story.
Right. And even Catholic sources like Buller's Lives of the Saints totally skip over it.
So we've got this one claim based on a single image interpretation going against what seems like a whole mountain of established tradition.
Exactly. It gets even weirder. There's Paphnutius' histories of the monks of Upper Egypt and the life of Onuphrius, a whole text about St. Onuphrius' life.
And
crickets, not a single mention of anything related to being transgender.
okay, this is officially a head-scratcher. So how do we make sense of this discrepancy? What's more likely to be accurate?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I think this highlights a really important point. The need to rely on credible, established sources when we're trying to piece together these historical narratives.
Especially when we're talking about religious figures who often inspire such strong devotion and have these intricate stories woven around them.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just take someone's word for it, even if their claim sounds intriguing or even groundbreaking.
We need to be critical thinkers. Look at the evidence, the context, consider who's making these claims and what their expertise is. All of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about this image that started it all? Is there another way to interpret it besides what Kalymnios is suggesting?
Well, there might be.
Oh, do tell.
There's Dr. Jason Borges. He's an expert on the region where the Snake Church is located, and he offers a different perspective on that image.
So someone who really knows the history, the culture, the art of the area.
Exactly. And he suggests that the image might actually be a symbolic representation of St. Onuphrius' lifestyle specifically, his wild ascetic life as a hermit.
I see where you're going with this. It's like those old paintings of hermits living out in the wilderness, all hairy and almost becoming one with nature.
Precisely. St. Onuphrius was often described as being covered in hair, almost like a wild beast. So Borges thinks those circles on his chest in the fresco might be more about emphasizing that untamed appearance rather than being, anatomically correct.
Huh. That actually makes a lot of sense, considering how St. Onuphrius is usually portrayed, and his whole deal is a hermit.
Right, and it just goes to show how important context is when interpreting art, especially religious art.
So we've got two very different interpretations of the same image. How do we know which one to trust more?
Well, this is where thinking about expertise comes in. On the one hand, you've got Kalymnios, a lawyer, making a claim based on his personal interpretation. And then you've got Dr. Borges, a scholar who specializes in this specific region and its history, offering a more contextualized analysis.
It's not about saying one person is right and the other is wrong, but recognizing that certain voices carry more weight.
Exactly. And here's another fascinating twist. Even if we were to find stronger evidence supporting Kalymnios' claim, it wouldn't necessarily change the way Orthodox Christians view St. Onuphrius.
Really? Why is that?
Because the church's teachings and traditions about him don't include any mention of him being transgender. And for believers, those teachings often carry more weight than a single image, especially one that's open to interpretation.
So it's about faith and established doctrine.
Exactly, and that raises an interesting question. How do historical evidence, faith, and the interpretation of religious figures all intersect? It's a fascinating dynamic.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like these stories about saints become almost sacred themselves, right?
They really do. They're woven into the fabric of a belief system, you know? They offer examples of how to live a pious life, how to connect with the divine.
So challenging those stories can feel like you're challenging someone's faith.
Exactly, which is why approaching claims like this with a bit of, a healthy dose of skepticism is so important.
It's not about just dismissing them outright or anything.
Right. It's more about asking those critical questions like, where did this information come from? What are the sources?
Yeah, and is there any bias or any agenda at play? You always have to wonder.
Absolutely. And those are questions we can all benefit from asking, no matter what we believe.
Totally. Now, going back to this claim about St. Onuphrius, there's another layer here that I think is interesting.
Yeah. What's that?
The person who originally shared this claim about him maybe being transgender, they were actually trying to criticize Orthodox Christians.
Right.
Yeah, they were accusing them of, like, criticizing the weirdness of some Catholic saints. And they were basically trying to use this example of St. Onuphrius to be like, see, you guys are hypocrites.
Oh, so using a claim that maybe isn't even true to call out what they saw as hypocrisy.
It seems that way.
Did it work?
Oh, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
The Orthodox community basically responded with, like, where's your proof? You know?
That's fair.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they pointed out that there's no support for this in any of their official sources, and that interpreting that image is super subjective.
It kind of sounds like it backfired a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Instead of proving hypocrisy, they just kind of highlighted how important it is to be careful about where you get your information.
Right. And to, approach these historical claims with caution.
Exactly. Like
Mhm.
sometimes the best way to respond to a questionable argument isn't with a counter-argument. It's just like, show me the evidence.
I love that.
Me too. It brings us back to critical thinking and, making sure our analysis is based on evidence. It's not about blindly accepting or rejecting information.
Right. It's about engaging with it thoughtfully
Yeah,
and really evaluating its validity.
for sure. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole St. Onuphrius situation, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first and foremost, always be wary of claims that seem like, wow, too good to be true or just super sensational.
Especially if they don't have solid evidence from authoritative sources.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in a good story, right? But you have to step back and be like, hold on, is this actually true?
Right, and how do we know it's true?
Exactly.
And another thing, don't be afraid to question what you hear and challenge the information you come across.
A little healthy skepticism can go a long way.
A long way. It's not about believing everything you hear or just rejecting everything out of hand.
Right. It's about trying to find the truth, which often means, you have to dig a little deeper, consult multiple sources, consider different perspectives.
Absolutely. What do you think?
I agree completely. And remember, history can be messy. There aren't always easy answers or clear truths.
Especially when we're talking about things that happened so long ago.
Yeah, it's a constant process of discovery, reevaluating and sometimes even revising what we thought we knew.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Right, absolutely. It reminds us that even when it comes to faith and sainthood, there's always more to learn.
So true. Now, here's a thought-provoking question for everyone listening. What if a saint, someone super revered, was definitively proven to be transgender? What would that mean for how we understand sainthood and different ways people can be holy?
Wow, that's a big question. It goes way beyond just analyzing history.
It really does. It makes you think about faith and identity and how we perceive holiness.
And it could have implications for, so many things.
Like, how would different faiths handle that kind of revelation? Would it force them to re-examine their doctrines or how they interpret their sacred texts?
It could even challenge those deep-seated cultural attitudes toward sainthood and gender identity.
For some people, it might lead to more inclusivity and acceptance in religious communities.
And for others, it might be met with resistance. Like people might double down on their traditional beliefs.
It's interesting to imagine how such a discovery could spark conversations and maybe even change how we understand what it means to be holy.
It's about recognizing that holiness can take many forms, and maybe our ideas about sainthood need to evolve to include the full range of human experience.
I like that. It's about inclusivity, recognizing the worth and dignity of every single person, no matter their gender identity or anything else.
That feels very in line with the spirit of compassion and acceptance at the heart of so many religions.
Right. It's about expanding our horizons, challenging any preconceived notions about what it means to be a saint, to be holy, to be in communion with the divine.
And I think that's the real power of a deep dive like this.
It is. It's not just about debunking a specific claim or settling a debate. It's about using these controversies as a starting point.
To have bigger conversations about inclusivity, about representation, about how our understanding of religion evolves over time.
Yeah, it's about, like, getting people to think critically and question their own assumptions, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. It's like we're all learning and discovering together.
Totally. Who knows, maybe someone listening will be inspired to go off and do some exploring of their own.
I hope so, to dig into the lives of other saints and religious figures.
Yeah, and not just stick to those, like, surface-level stories, but really try to uncover those hidden complexities and nuances.
That's where the real excitement is, when we start to question and explore. When we dive into the unknown.
With open minds and a thirst for knowledge.
Right.
And that, my friends, is what the deep dive is all about.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
See ya.